Hello, my name is Janine McGowan, and I'm here to talk about Flosstube. This is episode number 2 of the Blue Flower on Flosstube. Thank you all for joining me, and thank you all for the many, many wonderful, supportive, thoughtful comments that you gave me on the last Flosstube. It was absolutely delightful to hear directly from so many of you, and I very much appreciated your not only taking the time to watch, but taking the time to let me know that you had maybe what you had enjoyed or what you had wanted to see in future ones. I very much appreciate it. And while I'm giving thank yous, I have to mention 2 people in particular. Michelle Bendy Stitchy, who coached me literally through how to click onto various things in order to achieve a YouTube channel, because without her I would be sort of staring blankly at my computer and still not knowing how to do it. And then also to Steph, Lindy Stitches, who held my hand through this whole process and really supported me, dealt with my panic attacks, and was just wonderful. So they have so much good experience, the 2 of them, and I have absolutely appreciated all that they were willing to help me with. So thank you both. All right, moving right into what I'm stitching. I decided to reward myself for the first Flosstube with a new start. I don't do a lot of those, but since I hadn't started anything during Mania, I wanted to get a new one in. And the one that I chose is from Lucy Beam Love and Stitches, Maria Casson 1822. Let's see if I can get a fairly good view of this one. I very much love this chart. I love everything about it. I love the colors. I love the little swans up here. Oops, this whole backwards monitor thing is tricky. These little swans. I love the pink urn and the lovely flowers all the way around the border. And then, I don't know about you, but often one of the reasons that I choose a particular sampler is because of the verse. And the verse in this one is particularly apropos. It says, "If I am right, O teach my heart still in the right to stay. If I am wrong, thy grace impart to find that better way." And I think, especially now, it's important to think about the way that we're learning to examine our ideas, to examine our assumptions, to see how the intentions of our ideas may not match up with the effect that they have on the world. And I think that should be a lifelong project. Certainly, sometimes it has additional urgency, but I think it's something that we will do throughout our lives. And so I very much love this sampler for this moment. So I kitted it up right after I did the last Flosstube, and I got to spend all of Sunday working on it. I didn't have, well, I had all of the called for colors, I think, but it required 2 skeins of a few of them, and I didn't have those. I didn't have 2 of anything. So I went with what I had enough of in my stash and picked some colors I was happy with and just started stitching and had a lovely time doing that stitching. Unfortunately, the next morning, early in the morning, our beautiful greyhound named Cassie died suddenly, and that was, well, it was quite a shock. You know, she'd been with us essentially her whole life, and we didn't expect her to be passing away. And so I had that day off from work, and I was really just sitting with my grief, and I turned to stitching, as we so often do, and, you know, just sat soothing my spirit a little bit with the motion of it and the feeling, and also trying not to cry on the linen, and just thinking about her and thinking about how much she'd meant to us over her lifetime. And I realized as I was stitching that, you know, I was thinking how I will associate this stitch with her always, and I was thinking about the ways that I associate so many stitches with times of my life. That, you know, oh, this was where we lived in the new house, or this was the one I was working on while we were moving, or this is the one that, you know, that I was working on when so-and-so was in the hospital. And I think because we spend so much time with our stitching, our lives really get woven into it in a way that is very meaningful. Sometimes a little bit for a quick one that you did for a friend, sometimes a lot for one that you may have revisited over years or over a particularly turbulent time. And so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the way that historical needleworks appeal to so many of us, I think because we get a little piece of someone else's life that's been woven into it, and how meaningful that is, that you get the things they liked enough to include, the things they liked enough to stitch, the things they didn't like and so didn't put a lot of attention into, the things they wanted to have perfect and the things they didn't really care about. I think it's all in those pieces, and that's a fairly special thing, to touch someone else's life so intimately. We don't often get to do that, especially with someone from so far before our own time. So as I was having these deep thoughts, I realized that I had Cassie's collar on the table next to me, and I realized that I had chosen colors for Maria Casson which happened to coordinate almost exactly with her collar. So I then decided to adjust Maria Casson a little bit to essentially be the Ninkasi Memorial Sampler. And so I made a couple of changes to the design. Let's see, up on the top here, I'll try and get a little bit closer so you can see. But I added her name and the date to this top row. And then there are several elements that would go, let's see, here and here on both sides. I've put in the greyhound to replace those on one side already, and obviously I'll put the other one on here as well. But I've enjoyed very much seeing the colors of her collar in this piece, and certainly knowing that it will forever be tied to her in my memory is great. Now, the one tiny downside is that I'm going to change the verse. I think I'm going to use something from Lord Byron's epitaph for his dog, and so I will not get to use the verse that was one of the reasons I chose this, but I will definitely find another place to use that original verse because I love it so much. On to new Happy Mail, new things coming into the collection that I would love to stitch. I don't buy something new every day or every week. Well, every week, every 2 weeks, certainly. And so I tend to buy, maybe once every month or two, but I'll buy a couple things. And so I'm spreading them out over time so I have a little something to talk about as things come in and get put into the binders ready to stitch. So the latest is a Fair Lady sampler by Gigi R. And I think this is just wonderful. It has these lovely, fresh spring colors. They just feel great. And I particularly love, it's called a Fair Lady sampler, but here are these two ladies, in fact, right here, all dressed up. And I think of them as though, well, as though we are the way we dress up to go stitch with a friend or just see each other, which seems like such a cause for celebration these days, doesn't it? But I love it. I love the sunflowers. I love the pear that's as big as the house. I love the random little birds and the beautiful, beautiful flowers and the two pretty ladies in their lovely dresses. So I am looking forward to stitching this, hopefully very soon. So that's my new for this week. Section of the world around. I want to thank everyone who helped me identify my mystery bird from last time. I believe he is a lesser goldfinch. So lesser than what, I don't know, but a lesser goldfinch. And that was very nice to know. Thank you. I always enjoy knowing. And then for this week, it's a bird that I actually do know the name of. This is a California quail, and it's a little bit hard for me to get video of them, although we ground feed in our yard, so I see them all the time. They're a trifle skittish, but this one I was able to film walking along the fence, and I love them. I think they're wonderful. They're beautiful birds, but very often I will see the male birds, as this one is, doing guard duty either for their own partner or for a group a little bit later in the year when they start forming large groups. And there they are on the rock, or the fence, sounding the alarm, watching out for everything. And the whole time they have this absurd tuft of black feather just, flopping over their head. And I just can't get enough of that. I could watch them all day long. So there's the California quail. On to the next section. I had questions from people. People asked questions, and so I wanted to answer. I think the one that I got asked most was about my process as a designer, and so I wanted to take a minute to go through that. And several people also asked specifically about a particular design. They asked about Night Walk Down, so I thought I would use that as an illustration of how I go from nothing to a design. I keep a list, and that's generally the starting place, just a rolling list of things that I've thought of. Sometimes things that I've thought of a lot, sometimes just, oh, do something about four-leaf clovers, and I put it on the list. And so when I'm coming to make a design and I don't have any ideas, I start there and I roll through and see what comes to me. And then after that, the main starting point for a particular design is I make a folder, because folders are exciting. And in that folder, I start putting all of the things that I am thinking of in regards to the design. Because I have a full-time job, I do designing in between, so evenings, weekends. And often it would be that I'm working on something new, and then I have to go away for a week, and I want to be able to get fairly quickly back into what I was thinking and the mood that I was in for this design. And so I will put, for example, using Night Walk Down as an example, certainly if there are quotations I'm considering, I'll put those in. If there are animals that I want to use, I'll put those in, and I'll have photographs of them so that I can see what they look like when it comes to charting, so that I can do a reasonable job of recreating or suggesting them, depending on what I'm trying to achieve. So here as an example then, I'll start charting. Night Walk Down was a little bit unusual because normally the verse or the text, if there is any, would come in at the end. In this case, I did it first. So the very first drafts have the text because I was trying to get it charted so that I knew the scale of the other elements. So that's the first couple things, is just playing with the text. And then I added the next figure that I knew I would have, which was this cat. So a very large cat. So in the folder, I have a lot of pictures of cats walking because I wanted to see how that goes and what it looks like so that I could really study it. We do have a black cat, but I think if I asked her to pose in the position that I needed, she would decide to clean her tail. So I rely on the internet for photographs. And then, yeah, anything from that point that sparks a thought for me, I put it in the folder. Certainly animals that I think I might use, the peacock, I did that backwards, the peacock or the owl. Flowers that I were thinking about, I was looking at a lot of white flowers, thinking of night blooming things. I was looking at a lot of black flowers, thinking of maybe just having it all in dark colors. I looked at pictures of the moon and of tulips, raggedy parrot tulips of various things, and just anything that might spark that kind of feeling that I was aiming for, I put it in the file. And so then when I'm able to go back, usually the next weekend, and work on it, I'm able to get fairly quickly back into the mindset that I was in. Some designs come together very quickly, and start to finish, they go the way I thought they would, the way I pictured them in my head, and they're done. Some designs don't do that at all, and the way that they end up is completely different from what I had in my head originally. So I don't maybe have enough experience to know if that's the more usual path, or if as I do it more, it'll be maybe more streamlined. So it'll be interesting to find out. Then once I have the whole thing designed on my computer, I will go pull fabric and thread and finalize selections of those, and then either stitch myself, in which case I almost always change things, or send it off, in which case I really have to firmly commit before I send it to the model stitcher. Although sometimes I will let them know that I'm concerned about the area or that area, the way it's going to come through, and they'll send me pictures as it's going on to see how it's working and to see if we need to make a change. So that is my process for what it's worth. I don't know if anyone out there is thinking of starting some designing maybe, but I know there's a tremendous amount of creativity in the cross-stitch community, and I think there are a lot of good designs that could still come our way, so I'm looking forward to that. All right, best new thing this week is that we are getting a greyhound puppy next week. Yikes, wow. So I've never had a puppy before. I've never had a greyhound puppy before. I've only ever seen one in person once. I understand they're especially challenging, so it's something we're all a little nervous about, but I think we're at a good time when we can actually devote time and attention. All of us are home. We're all going to be able to be here and be consistent and give a puppy everything it needs to get over the hump to becoming an adult greyhound. So that's our newest adventure. If anyone has any special tips about adopting a greyhound puppy or having a greyhound puppy, I would love to hear them because I'm very much out of my depth, but I think it will help all of us to move forward, and yeah, we're looking forward to it. So I'm sure the next Flosstube there will be pictures of our beautiful girl, but she's getting picked up on Tuesday. So yeah, I look forward very much to seeing her, and I look forward to having a very long time with her in our lives as well, hopefully. So that's it for me today. Thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hope you're having some good mental health stitching time and good time with other Flosstubers. Again, I so appreciate the hundreds of hours that I have been able to enjoy from other Flosstubers taking their time to share stitching and life with me, and I'm very thrilled to be able to contribute just a little bit of that back, and I thank you all for watching. We will talk to you in a few weeks.